Hi guys, my name is Pindi Kumalo and I'm part of Back to Basics Culture, which is a tutoring institution that primarily focuses on tutoring accounting from first year to third year, as well as CTA, ITC and APC. So today I'll be taking you through the SAICA 2023 final assessment and how you should be reading the pre-release the first time that you get it. So that's that first time that you print it out and you're sitting at your desk and you are reading it. At this point, you're not primarily focused on identifying triggers, but you'd like to just get an understanding of the entity as a whole. And we are going to teach you how to read it very simplistically speaking. So let's have a look at document 1, okay? So document 1 is an email from the CEO. Already I'm asking myself, who is the CEO of this company? And that is Bridget Glassens. Okay, so that's an email that was sent to you on the 1st of December at 7:59 a.m. Already I'm taking into account that their format of writing emails is putting the date in full as well as the time. So something to take note of when you respond as well on the day, you need to make sure you are echoing how they are doing it. Sometimes they just put the date but not the time, but we need to make sure that we are responding to exactly how they draft their emails. Okay, so this was sent to the financial analyst, which is you in this instance, and they CC'd Sergel Anthony. So already I'm asking myself, who's Sergel? But as I read, I'm pretty sure that that will be made apparent to me. Okay, the subject is welcome, and I see there we are giving an attachment to the email. So one tip already with regards to APC, when you are responding, make sure that your attachment is very, very specifically named. As we can see here, they named it On Time Airline Pty Limited. Sometimes what we see is candidates will just attach and say response A or attachment 1. Remember, what we're trying to do with APC is to mirror what we do in the workplace. And in the workplace, you would make sure that you are labeling your attachments very, very specifically. Okay, cool. So let's get right to it. Okay. So Bridget says, hi there, welcome on your first day at On Time Airline. Already I'm asking myself, okay, they named their airline On Time, very, very brave, because that means already for marketing purposes and for reputational purposes, their airlines literally always have to be on time. Okay, so make sure when you're reading, you're not just looking for those triggers, but you are just understanding context. Okay, so that's one thing I'm noting already. If I ever see that there's been a complaint with regards to on time being late, then already there's something that I can raise to say it goes against the name of the entity. Okay, I hope it is the start of a beautiful journey for you with on time. Okay. So there, I'm taking note that they're very big on soft skills, right? Even when you respond on the day, make sure that you're taking into account that soft skill where you can respond and say, hi there, indeed, yes, I'm having a beautiful journey so far, and I'm looking forward to working for this entity, okay? In your position as a financial analyst, you'll be reporting directly to me, okay? So who are we reporting directly to? Bridget. Sometimes we forget who we're speaking to, and who's Bridget? The CEO. So take it back to that. I'm a financial analyst and I report to Bridget. Okay. In addition, your role will include assisting the finance division with any technical accounting and tax matters, as well as with preparation for annual audits. Okay, sounds basic, like what a financial manager would usually do. Then the next line we see there, they're saying, however, your role is going to extend beyond mere assistance. Oh, now I'm like, okay, now I'm getting excited. Okay, I plan to involve you in strategic projects. Okay, so already this is something that you can express gratitude to, that you are going to have a beautiful journey of learning. You're not just given the accounting and tax, but they are also going to involve you in strategic projects. Okay, for example, identifying areas for cost savings, for improved efficiencies, and for new business opportunities. Okay, so immediately what I would do when I start reading that pre-release, without the intention of identifying triggers, I would pull out a blank piece of paper and I would start analyzing. So here they're telling us that we need to, one, make sure that we're identifying areas for cost saving. So that means as you're reading the entire pre-release, you are looking for areas where we can save costs. Number two, you are looking for improved efficiencies, right? So that means that you're looking at areas where the entity is not doing so well and they could improve on that efficiency. And lastly, for new business opportunities. So now I stick that at the back of my head. I want to make sure that as I'm going through it, I look for cost savings, for improved efficiencies, and for new business opportunities. It's at the back of my head as I'm reading. Okay. Then Bridget says, I attach a document that provides background on on-time's operations. All right. We use this document to orientate new employees and directors, as well as to provide a record of our scope, vision, and risks. Enjoy the read. So you see there where she says, enjoy the read. Please make sure that you enjoy the read and you're not just reading, I'm looking for technical triggers. I want to go write APC, I want to pass, it will end in CSA, right? She said enjoy the read. So that means you really need to be calm and enjoy your beautiful journey at On Time. Okay, right. So moving on to the next page, and remember what we're looking out for, cost savings, improved efficiencies, as well as what was our last thing that we said we're looking for, new business opportunities. Perfect, cool. Right, so this is the attachment to the email and it's On Time Airlines Pty Limited background information. So they're telling us about their airline offering. Okay, so On Time was established during the 2020 COVID-19 lockdowns by Bridget Claessens, who wanted to start her own business. Immediately, I'm thinking to myself, during 2020, there were no flights. So she was very, very brave for starting this business at that point in time. But then when I look at it now, FlySafair is dominating the airline industry locally in South Africa. So maybe it wasn't the worst idea for her to start this entity at that point. So these are all thoughts that I'm going through as I am reading. And it's because I am engaging. I'm not particularly looking out for triggers as yet. I will get to that when I'm reading it for the second time. But now it's just that engagement that you need with the scenario. Okay, so Bridget had previously worked as Chief Operating Officer for a major local airline for over 10 years. Okay, so she's got experience and industry know-how. That's perfect. Starting On Time presented an opportunity to innovate by tweaking existing airline operating models. Okay, so already I'm thinking to myself, as I am reading throughout the scenario, I need to make sure that nothing is directly echoing what the current airlines are doing. Why? Because the whole reason for setting up this business was to innovate. She needed something new. So as I'm reading, again, I need to see something new. And that links back to that. She said that you'll be working towards identifying new business models. Okay, so do you see how we need to link? And if you're only reading to pick out triggers, you will not be able to identify these points. Okay. There were no legacy issues with systems, aircraft, and staff, so it was a unique opportunity to start from scratch and do things slightly differently. Okay, so again, they're echoing that we are on time and we would like to do things differently. We want to innovate, we want to cost save, we want to improve efficiencies, and we're looking out for new business. Okay, all right. On Time operates exclusively in South Africa, right? So now I'm seeing that keyword there, exclusively. And already I'm thinking they said they would like to find new business opportunities. Already I'm like, okay, why aren't we operating outside of South Africa? And maybe to start small, we can just expand into Southern Africa because we don't want to expand too much too soon. So already I'm looking at the first tip I can give as a financial analyst who's also been given that strategic role. Oh, hey, I saw that you said you would like to find new business opportunities. So why don't we make operating within Southern Africa one of them? Okay, then you can make an example as well with other airlines. Where do they operate? This is where you can also do a slightly bit of research to just check, where does FlySafair operate? Is it only in South Africa? Does it go to other Southern African countries? What is the story there? Okay. Currently operating daily scheduled flights between OR Tambo International Airport and Cape Town International Airport, and flights between OR Tambo and King Shaka International Airport. Okay, is that all? I'm asking myself, right? And I'm only seeing there's Cape Town, Joburg and Durban. Are those the only big cities that we have in South Africa? So already there's also opportunity to expand your businesses, right? Add PE in there, add East London in there, and I just want to say Limpopo. I don't know if they've got if they've got a, what do you call it, an airport, but okay, we can add Limpopo there as well. Don't come for me, Limpopo people. Okay. On time leases 4 pre-owned Airbus 320 aircrafts. Okay, so this is where I would stop and ask myself, these guys said they want to innovate and they want to do things slightly differently. So quickly I go check, does FlySafair disclose anywhere the type of aircraft that they use? Is it Airbus 320s? Is it good? Is it bad? Could there be some innovation? Is there some other airlines that we can make sure that we are leasing that will be more efficient? Okay. The first 10-year leases were entered into with effect from 1 Jan 2021, the day on time commenced operations. Cool, nothing there. Then we move on to the next paragraph. They're telling us that aircraft are leased by On Time on the basis that it is responsible for the insurance of aircraft, maintenance costs, and supplying the pilots, cabin crew, and ground staff required to operate the aircraft. Okay, so it literally looks like you are just leasing the aircraft on its own. The rest you provide for yourself. Okay, these are commonly known, commonly referred to as dry leases. I would also be a bit dry if I had to provide everything in a relationship. Am I right, ladies? Okay. So these are commonly referred to as dry leases in the aviation industry. Okay. The lessors provide only the aircraft, which includes the seats, branding, and all fittings. Okay, sounds like some men in relationships. While the lessee is responsible for everything else. Okay, if you're finding yourself in that, get out. Okay, the lessor requires On Time to put the aircraft on its own air operator's certificate and register the aircraft with the South African Civil Aviation Authority, also known as SACA. Okay. Regular maintenance of aircraft is very important to ensure safety and correct functioning during flights. In South Africa, maintenance of aircraft is regulated by SACA. And this is where I would also just note down to myself, I need to go and check these SACA regulations. What else is included in there? Is it just maintenance that's needed, or is there some other stuff? Why are we concerned about this? Because we don't want to find ourselves being labeled as non-compliant with laws and regulations. So that's something that you can just go look up on. Okay. On Time, and not the lessor, is responsible for all maintenance and outsources maintenance activities to a reputable Johannesburg-based aircraft maintenance operator. Okay, so we see that we are responsible for the maintenance of the aircraft. However, we do not do it ourselves. We are outsourcing. Okay. On Time classifies maintenance activities into 3 categories for accounting purposes. There's routine inspections, there's major inspections, and there's major overhauls. Okay, so immediately I'm thinking, I remember back in CTA, there used to be something about inspections and major inspections in IS16, but at this point in time, I'm not going to go and deep dive into it because there's no issue as yet that has been mentioned that shows me that this is a trigger. Okay, remember, this is the first read where you're just reading to engage and understand the entity. Each of On Time's 4 aircraft is configured to have 174 economy class seats. There are no business class or first class sections. I'm like, why? Why don't we have such? Given that we said we want to innovate and we want new business offerings. Let's already include a business class or a first class section. There really are people, guys, who like class. So you will always get those individuals who will book the business class and first time section. So already I'm thinking to myself, Bridget gave me this document to understand the business and I have been given that that role to also assist with strategy. So immediately, so you don't look like a boring CA, you want to engage with the CEO. When you set up or when she sets up that first meeting with you, you're like, oh, hi, Bridget. I noticed that one, we only fly between Joburg, we say Durban and Cape Town. And you mentioned that you would like to expand into new business offerings. So why don't we look at flying to PE, to East London, and to other major cities, as well as why aren't we making sure that we include business class and first class? That will indeed speak to that we want to improve on or we want to provide new business offerings. Okay, so do you see the linking there that you need to do from what you read from page to page? So don't just read like a robot where you are not making the different links. Actually, these days robots are very advanced. They can make the links. So let's make sure that our jobs are not taken by robots in future because of that inability to make links. Okay. Operating a commercial airline is a challenging task due to the high fixed costs. Okay, so already I think, what did she mention to me? She wants to make sure that we reduce costs. So now I'm literally going to look at this with that mindset. Okay, what are the high fixed costs? Is there any way that we can decrease these fixed costs? So these fixed costs, she tells you, they are lease payments, okay? Is there anything that we can change there? Employee costs, etc. Okay, and these are incurred by airlines and significant competition in the industry. Okay, air travelers are notoriously fickle when it comes to ticket prices. I know I'm very fickle. I will make sure that I look for the cheapest airline. Okay, they tend to shop around for the lowest cost airfare and are not particularly brand loyal. Right, so that's what we do see. Most people are not brand loyal. So how can we, as On Time, make sure that we actually build that brand where people want to book with us? It doesn't matter what the price is. And sometimes it happens with FlySafair, where I think twice if I have to go another airline. Of course, I'll look for the cheapest one, but if FlySafair is very close in terms of prices to another airline, I'll go with FlySafair. So I can say I've got a bit of brand loyalty to FlySafair there. Okay. This is not a paid promotion, by the way. Okay, so On Time embraced various core values when it started operations and continues to do so. Okay, so this is where now you need to pay attention when you are given values, missions, and objectives of the entity. Note them down, not in your piece of paper, not in your pack, but in your head. Because what happens is that on the day when you need to refer to it, you're now just paging through your pre-release, and guess what? We all know that time is moving. That 8 hours is short when you are sitting in that venue. Okay, so let's have a look at what their core values are, and we want to make sure that we reference to these in either a strategy question or ethics. Very important for ethics types of questions. So when you see that they're going against what they've said is their values, you need to make sure that you mention what their values are. They treat customers with utmost respect. They greet them by their name wherever possible, right? And then they attempt to depart on time wherever possible. That one they definitely have to do because the name of their entire airline is On Time. Okay, imagine the reputational damage. Imagine Twitter, how crazy it would go. I'm not on Twitter, but I always hear people get and businesses get trashed there. So imagine your name being on time and you are not on time. The memes that would come from that. Okay. Allow customers a full refund of ticket prices if they cancel flights within a reasonable period, no later than 24 hours before departure. Immediately I'm like, wait, okay, is this what we should be doing? Is that what FlySafair does? Do they refund my full ticket? And because this is the pre-release period, I would research it by physically going to book a ticket at FlySafair, then I cancel it before this 24 hours lapses, just to see, will FlySafair give me all my money back, or are they taking something? Because this is something that we can use to make sure that we're combating those high fixed costs that we're using to still remain profitable. Put safety first. The safety of our customers is of critical importance. Cool. So if in an ethics question you see that none of these values were lived up to, then you can mention right? Lastly, embrace the fourth IR and use technology wherever possible to make on-time more efficient and more effective. What does this speak to? That they want improved efficiency. So as you are reading, you also want to be on the lookout for what technologies can be used within on time to make sure that we are living up to this value. So guys, please hit the subscribe button down below and the little bell so that you can get notifications of whenever we upload our SAICA December 2023 APC pre-release breakdowns. Thank you.
Hi guys, my name is Sinazo Makaya. I'm one of the APC mentors at Back to Basics. So we're still looking at document 1, and as you can see the title now, we are moving. So they tell us that SAICA, that you have already been introduced to, is a statutory entity that was established in terms of the Civil Aviation Authority Act to administer civil aviation safety and provide security oversight. Okay, all right. So now we know which laws and regulations applicable to us and which organization is responsible for that. So let's look at this in more detail. So they say that SAICA complies with the standards and recommended practices of the International Civil Aviation Organization, all right, which is a United Nations agency. So can you see what they have done? This is part of research where you normally go to Google to find out what are the laws and regulations applicable to the entity. They've already told you. So there's no point for you to go back to the internet and start searching which organization governs the operations of aviation companies. It's here. What you need to do is read the information provided and ask yourself, what does it mean for operations? What does it mean for our compliance? And what does it mean for our objectives that we already mentioned earlier? Right, so they tell us SAICA's main focus areas are providing specific operating regulations. That's specific. So you want to ask yourself, what does this mean for our company? For example, we can start thinking, if we don't comply with these regulations, what's going to happen? We're going to be non-compliant. What does it mean for us to be non-compliant? Are we still going to be able to use our license? And if we can't use it, what does it mean for the cost that we're trying to cut, as we mentioned earlier? Then second bullet point, they tell us that they also provide technical training and certification of various license holders. For example, pilots and air traffic controllers. Now, you're not going to get a question where they ask you list the 5 duties of SAICA, but you have to ask yourself, how can I use this information? For example, we mentioned earlier that we are looking for growth opportunities. So now you need to start thinking, if it happens that we embark on a new project, there's going to be training requirements. So we need to remember those SAICA requirements and ensure that we are compliant. They also look at investigating and reporting on any aviation accidents. Okay, take a moment again. What does that mean for us? Okay, we are a new company that's trying to grow, and as part of a strategy, we want to cut costs. We know from experience what happens when companies try to cut costs. Sometimes they neglect the safety and quality of the service that they're providing, which means that there are accidents. So this is supposed to tell us that whatever we recommend in terms of cutting costs, for example, or improving efficiencies, it must not be something that's going to result in aviation accidents, because that's going to make us to become non-compliant with the SAICA requirements. So can you see how you read this thing? It's not just sitting down and ticking a list and saying, now I know the laws, then what? How can those laws impact our operations and what we are trying to do? All right. They also host workshops for stakeholders about aviation safety and security, and provide surveillance inspections and audits of licensed aviation operations, which includes airports. So now I'm starting to think, okay, I'm expecting to see expenses related to these procedures when I look at my income statement, for example, because in order for us to be compliant, we need to be continuously doing those things. For example, ensuring that we are training our staff members in terms of the aviation safety and security procedures that are expected from us. And I need to remember this. If we change something in our operations because we're trying to improve efficiencies or we are introducing new projects, I need to refer to this so that I can confirm that we are still compliant. All right, still looking at our industry. Now we can see that we have already been provided with the information about the competitors. Again, I like this because some areas where I've noted that candidates always confuse research and just reading with is when it comes to things like your pistol items, for example, as well as your 5 Porters model. So we've noted in the past that what would happen is people just go to Google and look at those things, look at the list of competitors, look at the list of the applicable laws and regulations, look at the economic factors, but without actually sitting down and finding the link between the entity's operations as well as those factors. So they've already given you the information, which means that you don't need to go again and look for the competitors. It's here. But what you need to do, as we mentioned earlier, find inspiration. What are other companies doing? How can we take that and link it to our objectives and our growth aspects, as well as what is still missing in the industry based on what we are doing as well as what our competitors are doing. So let's get into it. So here they say on-times competitors in the South African airline market include Airlink, FlySafair, Lift Airlines, SAA, which is South African Airways, and CemAir. So we're not surprised because we've been thinking about these companies from the beginning when we realized that this company is in the aviation industry. Then they give us a brief summary of each company. So starting with Airlink, they say it's a privately owned airline that started operations in 1992, and today it has over 50 commercial jets that fly over 45 destinations and 14 African countries. Okay, this is not a story time, so not just gonna read that and pause. We pause and then ask ourselves, what does it mean for us as on time? It's privately owned. Is it similar to us? Is it different to us? Because it's going to help us determine where we're at and how we can move forward. They were established in 1992, so they're older than us. Can you see? It doesn't surprise us that they have a greater share of the market. They fly to 45 destinations and 14 countries. Can then you ask yourself, we said that one of our objectives is to grow, identify growth opportunities. So what inspiration can we take from Airlink? For example, currently we only operate in South Africa. They fly to 14 countries, okay? We've picked up, there is a South African company that flies to other countries outside South Africa. Okay, that means there's space for us as well to grow in other countries. So we have to ask ourselves, what do we need to implement in order for us to get a share of the other countries as well? They fly to 45 destinations. We currently fly to 3 destinations. So we're thinking 45 destinations, okay, let's see. How can we also get into the market that Airlink is in? So can you see that the things that you're picking up now so that you don't have to sit down later and identify things that you can recommend when you're asked to present to the board in terms of what we can do in order for us to grow. Then FlySafair, they say again it's privately owned. We can relate to that. It's a low-cost airline that currently operates a fleet of 22 aircrafts. Okay, seeing that, okay, everyone that we have read about to this point, they have more aircrafts compared to us, and we are leasing our aircraft. So now we're thinking, is there space for us to grow as well and get more aircraft, which means that's going to help us to get a bigger share of the market. It's renowned for its high percentage of flights departing on time. Out of all the things that we've read about, that departing on time, that's something that is closely aligned with our values. We said we are on time and we ensure that we depart on time and we arrive on time. So now there's another aircraft in the industry that's doing that. How do we differentiate ourselves? Remember, so far that has been the key thing, one of the key things about us. So if someone else is doing it, how can we further differentiate ourselves in the market? All right, and then we are introduced to Lift Airlines. So Lift is a newcomer to the South African skies. Again, a moment of reflection for us. That's something that we relate to. Okay, we are also a newcomer in the industry, so we can look at how they're making the operations better, how they are improving their operations, so that we can be inspired and ensure that we improve as well. Right, then they tell us that Lift offers daily scheduled flights between our Tambo, Cape Town, and King Shaka airports. Wait a minute, that sounds familiar. That's our schedule. We currently fly to our Tambo, Cape Town, and King Shaka. So if you look at the scale of the operations of Lift Airlines, it's similar to us, right? The way they do things, they're a newcomer, and they also have the same schedule as us. Okay, so it's possible to succeed in this industry because we can see another established airline doing what we are doing at a similar range. But we don't want to end there. We said our objective is to grow. So let's look at what other competitors have to offer. Then we are told about SAA. And this is an airline that is owned by the South African government and came out of business rescue in April 2021. So the scale of its operations has been significantly reduced. Highlight, significantly reduced. What does it mean? It means that when the operations of SAA were reduced, that left a market share for the other airlines to get and operate at a larger scale and generate more revenue. So what we have to ask ourselves is, from what Airlink, FlySafair, Lift, etc. have taken from the market share that was left when SAA reduced its operations, is there still an opportunity for us to get more customers and grow in this industry? Because if one airline is not operating at a scale that it used to before, that means there's opportunity for newcomers like us. So we have to note that, because it's going to be relevant when we start presenting to the board in terms of what's there in the market, what opportunities are out there for us to grow. Last but not least, we have CemAir. Again, privately owned, something that we resonate with, operates smaller aircraft flying to destinations such as Bloemfontein, George, Margate, etc. Now, they introduce something interesting. Earlier, when we started looking at this document, we were questioning why we currently operate in 3 destinations only. So if CemAir can fly to George, Bloemfontein, Kimberley, Richards Bay, that means there's more in the market. So what this is telling us is that we've been focusing at the bigger cities because that is what everyone is doing. But now we have been given ideas when we go back to the board to suggest new territories that we can take over. We can mentioning towns like Kimberley and Richards Bay. Yes, they are small, but there is a market, which means that we can, before we even look at outside South Africa, let's try to get more share of the South African market. So can you see how we are reading this? We're not just taking a list. Oh, I know the competitors. Then what? What does that information tell you about our objectives? How can I use this information when I provide advice in terms of cutting costs? What are other airlines doing that help them cut costs? How can I use this information to suggest ways of improving efficiencies? What am I saying from our competitors that if we implement, we can improve our efficiencies? What am I seeing from our competitors in terms of growth opportunities? What are they doing that we are not doing? And it's something that can help us grow and generate more revenue. Right, then we are told that the South African airline industry has experienced turbulent times in recent years. Are we surprised? No, it's a few years after the COVID outbreak and everyone was affected, including this industry. But what we've noticed is it's starting to improve. We've seen that there are more people flying, holiday destinations are open, so people are traveling more. Okay, then we ask ourselves, what does that mean for us? there are opportunities in the industry for us to, get more aircrafts, fly more, increase our capacity so that we can ensure that as the industry improves, we also improve our operations. They also mentioned that after the COVID outbreak in 2021, Comair and SAA, Comair rather, a major airline, went into liquidation. So hold that thought because we're going to unpack that. Okay, as we continue, while we are looking at what has happened recently in the industry, so we are told that Comair went into liquidation and SAA scale of operations was reduced. And these are factors that have provided opportunities for other operators such as Airlink, FlySafair, Lyft, and On Time. So as we've been mentioning, they are confirming that there's space for us to grow. It's a matter of us sitting down and planning in terms of how we are going to do this. Okay, let's see what else they give us. Okay, still on that discussion of growth opportunities, they are saying that passenger volumes, and those were obtained from the airports company, South Africa, are still below COVID times. Remember, we said it's been a few years after the COVID outbreak in 2020, so all industries are still taking baby steps, trying to improve, and rather some analysts have been saying in the industry, we might not go back to how life was before COVID, but there are ways of improving and making things better now. So if you look at that chart on page 5, you can see that we have improved, rather the industry has improved in terms of passenger departures. If you compare 2020 up to 2022, there's a major jump from 2021 to 2022. And even before they ask you on the day what caused the jump, you already know. Remember, if you think about the South African lockdowns, 2021 was the last year that we had lockdowns where no one was allowed to travel. But from 2022, everything was open and we could travel. So that jump, huge jump from 2021 to 2022 is justified. So that was another way that you can bring your general knowledge into the exam room. Some things won't be obvious, they won't be rewritten on the scenario, but you have to use the knowledge that you already have and apply it to the company, which is how you should be thinking every day. You can't just always focus on the technical knowledge. You have to think about what happens outside in your daily life and bring it in. That's how you're going to generate points when you write your discussions. Okay, so by now you should have a brief idea of what the company is about, who One Time is, what are the objectives, what the strategy, what are the key operations. But we still don't have much information about the people behind the success of the company, or rather the strategy of the company. Hence, now we're going to move on to our next session, which is the governance and shareholders of the company.
Okay. So let's move on to the governance and shareholders section of our pre-release. Okay. So let's have a look. Our shareholders, we've got Miss Bridget Clausen. Already we remember she is the CEO. She's the one that opened this pre-release for us. And then we've got Mr. Segel Anthony, who owns 20%, also has been mentioned before. Now we see that he's a shareholder. And then we've got Real Equity Impact Fund of South Africa that owns 30%. First Regional Bank, 90%. Wow, very original, is it? First Rand Bank. Okay, right. So now let's have a look at the more information about our shareholders. Okay. So RIFSA, we're told, so that's the one that owns 30%, is a South African-based private equity fund that seeks investments in projects related to infrastructure, sustainable energy, and tourism. Okay, so I see that word sustainable energy, and already I'm thinking ESG, quite a topical subject at the moment, and it really does revolve around building business most towards sustainable energy. Okay. It acquired 30% of its shareholding interest at inception. Okay. First Regional Bank is a South African registered bank, go figure, that has structured, arranged and funded all of On-Time's aircraft leases as the lessor. So now I take a step back. I'm like, okay, First Regional Bank has 19% shareholding and it also structures and handles our leases. So probably knocking on related parties, but I'm not going to go and deep dive into the related party standard yet. It's just something at the back of my head. Remember what we said, this is the first time you're reading the pre-release when you're not particularly looking to do in-depth research. Okay, so we've got on-time directors that we are told about, and I know this is where you guys like to go crazy on the King Code and just check what the King Code requires there, so I'm not going to touch much on it because you guys are experts on that. Okay, so we're given there, we've got Miss Bridget, CEO, Segel Anthony, CFO, and we are told that he's a CASA. Again, not going to go into the CPC because I know that you guys are experts at researching that. Okay. Then we've got Ms. Kukuletu Dlamini, who's an independent non-exec, Mr. Basil Oliphant, who's a non-executive director, Mr. Clive Zimmerman, an independent non-exec, and Mr. Simon Bungane, who's a non-executive director. Okay, so we know we would also just check if that's in accordance with the King Code. Then we told you Mr. Oliphant is employed by RIFSA as a senior executive. Mr. Bungane works in the Aviation Finance Division of First Regional Bank. Okay, now I'll just check. Okay, so Mr. Oliphant works, is employed by RIFSA, and if we check who he is exactly, if we go back, he's a non-executive director, and RIFSA also owns 30% of shares in On-Time. Okay, so quite a lot of zigzagging there, a lot of links between people who are mentioned to be non-executive directors. So we need to have a very questioning mind as to whether someone can be a non-executive director and are they able to carry out their duties given their other roles and responsibilities. Okay, Mr. Bungane is married to Ms. Sharon Bungane, a well-known personality in the South African travel industry. Okay, Ms. Bungane is the CEO of RSA Travel, a leading online travel agency. Okay, so we see some close connection to someone who is part of an online travel agency and perhaps something that we can use for advertising, right? On-Time is committed to good corporate governance, go figure, right? So that is also a value of theirs. That's something that they pride themselves in. And what did we say? We need to note that down so that as we're reading the entire pre-release, we try to see is there something that they're doing that goes against their values and things that they hold themselves accountable towards, which is also evident from the fact that the governing body decided that the company will strive to adhere to the recommended practices of the King IV report on corporate governance. So again, if you are reading either here or on the day and you see that there's something that goes against the King Code, you can mention that it is also going against what the company is striving to do. Okay, so now let's have a look at the salient financial and other information. We told that On-Time has a December financial year end. Then they gave us the financials from 2021 all the way to 2022, and we also are given the forecasted 2023 information. Okay, number of leased Airbuses was 2 in 2021. Then 2022 we also had 4. We had an increase actually there. So that speaks to what? Expanding. And then we see that forecasted we are expecting to remain with 4 aircrafts. Okay, number of average annual flights per aircraft, we see they are remaining the same. Okay, so this is where we need to have a questioning mind. Why is it that our average annual flights are literally staying the same for 3 years? If we include in the forecasted balances, what can we do there to ensure that we are flying more? Because more flights means more revenue. Total number of available seats, we see there that it was 500 for 2021 and then the same for 2022 and 2023, which is expected because we have the same airlines. Okay, same Airbuses, that is. Then we've got the actual number of passengers. Okay, so this is where, even if I hadn't seen that load factor, I would actually just divide the actual number of passengers divided by the total number of available seats to see that occupancy rates. Already I can think, okay, load factor means occupancy rates. Okay, we want that to be as high as possible. Then we've got average price per ticket sold. Okay, so we see that 965, 1310 and 1574 in 2023. This is where now I would go and have a look at maybe FlySafair and all those other competitors that were mentioned as Sinazo took you through earlier, to just check how we're doing when we're compared to our competitors, and having a look at flight prices. Okay, then we've got number of tickets sold. Okay, so we see a significant increase there, almost double from 2021 to 2022, but in our forecasted 2023 we don't see that much of an increase from 22 to 23. We ask ourselves why. And also, like Sinazo took you through, there was an airline that left the market. So are we making sure that we market ourselves to be able to gain a share of the gap that was left by that airline? Okay, the load factor is calculated as the number of passengers who traveled with on time divided by the number of seats, go figure. Then the number of tickets sold differs from the actual passengers actual number of passengers for various reasons. Now I want to have a close look at these various reasons. One, customers who purchased tickets but then failed to arrive for check-in. Now, if we go back, do we remember that they mentioned that if you cancel before 24 hours, you get all your money back? And that's something that we said we want to double check. Is that what FlySafair would do? Or do they take a percentage based on that you have cancelled on a flight? Okay, so here we're seeing that the reason that the seats are not occupied is because someone has purchased a ticket but they failed to arrive. And if we're refunding them, that means that revenue is gone. So we don't want to be sitting in that position. Number two, as to why our number of seats that are occupied are way less than the number of seats that were sold, is that customers who purchased tickets and then subsequently requested refunds. Okay, again, this goes back to should we be refunding fully? What should our policy be? And customers who purchased tickets for future dated travel. Okay, right, so makes sense there. Now moving on to our next page. Right, so now they're giving us a more in-depth analysis. So here we see, okay, ticket revenue, okay, looks fine. I'm just looking out for anything that pops out. I'm seeing customer reservation charges. Okay, what are those? Okay, and then we've got lending and parking fees. We've got depreciation of right-of-use assets. Okay, everything looks normal. Again, I'm going to leave that to you guys because I know you guys are pros at doing ratio analysis. But now the question is, how do you apply that ratio analysis? Okay, so note number A. Well, not number A. That's speaking to lending and parking fees as well as ticket revenue. Let's have a look at what's said there. So ACSA charges airlines such as on-time passenger service charges, aircraft landing fees, and aircraft parking fees for the use of its facilities. Okay, so this is basically, I need to paint a picture for myself because sometimes when you are reading, you struggle to know what's what. So paint a picture. See yourself at OR Tambo. Okay, so you're saying OR Tambo charges on time the landing fees, just you landing, you get charged for that. The aircraft parking, okay, so say that the aircraft is not on the air, it's parked, you also get charged for that. So you need to really work on visualizing these scenarios, otherwise it might just go over your head. Okay, so now I've got that visualization on lock. Landing and parking fees are dependent on the weight and origin of aircraft landing at ACSA operated airports and are recovered directly from airlines. Okay, so we see that these landing and parking fees are dependent on the weight and origin of the aircraft. If we ever have to purchase a new aircraft, we need to consider its weight. Why? So that we make sure that we're managing those landing and packing fees. Remember what one of the items that was mentioned to you as being part of the strategic team is that you need to look out for any way you can save costs. So what's one way of saving costs? Making sure that if we ever lease another aircraft, the weight is not too much. Otherwise, we will end up with exorbitant landing and packing fees. Okay. Passenger service charges are recovered by ACSA based on air tickets purchased by travelers. Okay. On time recognizes landing and packing fees as an expense, right? Passenger service charges collected from passengers by on time are not recognized as revenue, but rather as a liability and paid over to ACSA. So here, because I'm reading this pre-release for the first time, I wouldn't deep dive into whether that's correct or not. I'll just highlight it and say, okay, when I'm coming back to read it for the second time, when I'm identifying triggers, I'm going to look at whether this accounting treatment is correct or not. Okay, so let's have a look at paragraph B there, what that relates to. So paragraph B relates to other revenue. Other revenue represents mainly food and beverages that are sold to on flights. Okay, that makes sense, right? Then let's have a look here at what paragraph C is speaking to. On time outsources maintenance operations to a reputable local company. We know that why? Because they mentioned it on the very first page, so we can make that link. Maintenance is scheduled after a certain number of flying hours and in terms of strict programs and protocols. Why are there strict programs and protocols? Because it is a regulatory requirement. Now we need to remember what we looked on when we were reading at the previous pages. Okay, then paragraph D. On time procured a software service SaaS solution called PISYS, okay, for its passenger service system from an international software group. The cloud-based system incorporates a reservation system, customer relationship management, travel agent management system, a full e-commerce website, fares management software, and check-in and gate control systems. Okay, this sounds like a very, very, very full package. And On Time decided that instead of purchasing the software and systems, it would pay the software vendor a fixed price per customer who purchases tickets. Okay, so now this is where I need to sit back and think, okay, in terms of costs, which one would have been better? To just purchase the entire system and run it ourselves, or to pay per fixed customer who purchases prices? For myself, the latter sounds a bit better, because even if you didn't get customers but you owned the system, you would still need to pay. So this is just something that I would think of. Okay. Selected information from the financial statements and the statement of financial position, rather, for forecast for the year FY 2023 was set down below. Then let's have a look at anything that looks a bit odd. Again, I'll leave that ratio analysis to you guys. I'm just looking out for something that's different. Then I'm seeing that one line item there, deferred revenue on ticket sales. Now I'm asking myself, okay, what is deferred revenue on ticket sales? What does it mean? What is the impact? Because it's one thing that's popping out. Everything else I'm very familiar with from back in CTA. Now let's have a look to see if they describe exactly what this deferred revenue on ticket sale is. Okay. Already I can think back to where they mentioned that there are customers who make purchases for future travel. Maybe that's what this deferred revenue relates to. Okay, I'm just thinking and trying to link at this point in time. Okay, then we see an extract of the accounting policies there. On Time accounts for all items of PPE, including the ROU asset on the cost model in accordance with IAS 16. Then depreciation is recognized on a straight line basis over the respective useful life. And lastly, On Time has elected not to apply hedge accounting per Chapter 6 of IFRS 9. Listen, in my head I'm like, can there not be hedge accounting mentioned at all? Because as soon as I say that, I'm like, oh my word, not that standard, but okay, cool. Now let's move on to our next page. Okay, so I will just hand over to Sinazo, who will take us through the key risks of the business before we close off on document 1.
All right, now we are looking at section 6, which is our key risks. Now take note of the heading. They've already went and done the research for you, and they have provided the risks. Again, efficiency when you are preparing for the exam day. You don't have now to go and sit down, do a research on the internet to find those risks and sort them out according to the level of their importance, rather to assess which ones are key risks. It's here, but let's now interpret them in terms of what we are trying to do. Okay, ChatGPT skills coming through. So they're saying they got this list from ChatGPT, and this is what ChatGPT gave them when they asked for the major risks facing South African airlines. Okay, so this is a report. It says South African airline industry faces several major risks that can impact its operations and financial stability. Note that, because our next question was going to be, how can we look at these risks and assess how operations as well as financial stability is affected? So 5 significant risks, and the first one is economic volatility. Are we surprised? No, we know how the South African economy has been doing recently, and the airline industry has been affected as well. So they go on to say that the South African airline industry is vulnerable to economic fluctuations and market conditions, which doesn't surprise us, because if we think about what we know about day-to-day life, whenever things become more expensive and things are tough economy-wise, one of the things that people let go is traveling, or they choose cheaper alternatives to traveling. For example, someone would just choose to take a bus from Joburg to Cape Town, for example, if that is cheaper than taking a flight. So this being one of the key risks does not surprise us at all. Then we are told about the economic downturns, currency devaluation, inflation, political instability that can affect passenger demand in ways that we just explained. Okay, purchasing power, like we just said now, if people have less money to spend, flights are one of the things that they're going to sacrifice. Okay, things like business travel as well, that has also reduced. And if you can think about the workspace now, in 2020 we were introduced to working online because we could not go to the offices and sites where people normally work. So since then, working online, working from home has been a norm. And when companies noted that they can conduct meetings online globally, even with stakeholders outside the country, that's when they cut traveling. So we can see how this is a key risk for us, because we want people to travel. That's how we make revenue as on time. So can you see now, instead of you going to say, okay, I need to compile personal research and look at economic factors, it's here. But now you have to ask yourself, in terms of the vision of the company, as well as what we're trying to do, how does it affect our project, and how we can consider this when we introduce new things. So the significant risk that we're looking at is fluctuations and fuel prices. Okay, so here we can see that fuel costs represent a significant portion of airlines' operating expenses, which makes sense for any company that operates in the transport industry. Okay, what influences this? When we look at the second sentence, we are told that fluctuations in global oil prices can significantly impact profitability, as airlines may struggle to pass on increased costs to passengers in highly competitive markets. Right? Sharp increases in fuel prices can also strain the financial health of South African airlines. Again, we are not reading a story. We need to ask ourselves, what does this mean for us? Okay, for example, where they say it can affect our profitability, we can link it to the pricing of our tickets. We want to ensure that when we review the prices of our tickets, we can ensure that the prices that we charge enable us to recover all the costs that we incur to run our operations, to run our aircrafts, and still be able to make a profit. Also, when you look at how we can protect ourselves against those fluctuations in oil, which eventually affects the fuel prices. Now we can start connecting this to what was said on the previous page. Remember on the previous page, when PDs took you through the financial statements, they mentioned something that's very important. They said that they have not elected to apply hedge accounting. So now you look at this and you're like, it doesn't make sense that one of your key risks is fuel price fluctuations, but you have not hedged the price. Okay, so we're starting to think now how we can suggest that they apply hedging so that the company can protect itself from this high cost that we may not be able to recover from our customers. Something else I wanted to show you on this risk, if we go back to the financial statements on page, it's going to be page 7, where they gave us the statement of profit or loss information. Look at the expenses. If you look at the expenses, again, you can see that fuel costs are the highest line item when you look at total operating expenses. So we can see that this is indeed a key risk. That confirms it. But also, one of our objectives is to cut costs. So you're thinking, if we can implement hedge accounting, which has not been implemented, that could help us with that line item. And in overall, we're going to be able to cut our costs. So those things that you can start thinking about, so that on the day when you're asked to give these recommendations, you're not starting from scratch to try and complete a list of 5 things. If you start thinking about those things during the pre-list period, it's going to be easy for you to compile that report if you get asked to submit one on the day. Right, the third risk that we're facing is the policy changes, the changes in policies and regulations. Does this surprise us? It shouldn't, because earlier when they introduced us to the company, it was specific that there are strict rules, laws, and regulations in this industry that one needs to comply with. So when this comes up as one of the key risks, it's not surprising, because we even started discussing ways we can be implemented if we do, ways we can be affected if we do not comply with these laws and regulations. So here they're saying that changes in regulations, government policies, and aviation agreements can have a direct impact on the airline's operations and profitability. You can already imagine that the license for this industry must be expensive. Even the process of obtaining one or renewing one must be, administrative and expensive. So you don't want to be on the wrong side of the law, because if you can't operate, for example, for a week because your license is not up to date, you can already imagine how much revenue you can lose. So those are things that we can take note of, and it doesn't surprise us that it is mentioned as one of the key risks. Okay, as we continue reading, we see that some of the key things here are safety requirements that can change from time to time based on the changes in the industry. There are landing rights, ownership restrictions that create challenges for South African airlines in terms of compliance and operational adjustments. The last line is interesting, because so far we haven't asked ourselves why they are leasing instead of owning those aircrafts, because we were told that they are leasing the aircrafts, they don't own any of them. Okay, we could have thought, obviously it means they don't have funding for them to own the aircrafts yet. But when you read that line, it's starting to make sense. In addition to just having funding, there's strict restrictions in place, which you need to note, because later you can't just easily recommend that just own your aircraft instead of leasing. You need to be able to say, when you suggest something, also know the other side, which means they also, when you suggest, for example, that they own instead of leasing, also need to mention that there are restrictions and check if we're able to, get past the restrictions and get approval. Fourth key risk, intense competition. Still, we're not surprised because we saw earlier that we are competing with 4 to 5 airlines, established airlines. So when this comes up as a key risk, this does not shock us, but we have to ask ourselves, why is this relevant and how it can affect our operations. Okay, so they say that South African airlines face intense competition, both domestically and internationally. Okay, where is the competition coming from? There are low-cost airlines, and this creates a highly competitive landscape, which does not surprise us. There are price wars, aggressive marketing, and capacity expansion by competitors that can squeeze profit margins and market share for established carriers. Okay, we've seen this. We've seen the billboards, for example, the FlySafair billboards, where they advertise, for example, where they introduce a new airline, or when they have those specials where they charge low prices for their airlines. I know there's one day every year where we all wait, camp online on their site, hoping to buy tickets for tourists. I'm never lucky. So if you have ever been able to get a ticket from that sale, well, I envy you. So things like that, those are things that we can start thinking about implementing, because it's aggressive marketing and we want to ensure that we grab some of the market through these marketing strategies. Last but not least, security and safety concerns. Again, when you think about the nature of the industry, this is not shocking, because we know that things can go bad quickly, if the landing is not appropriate, or there's an emergency landing. So you need to ensure that everyone is safe. So we're not surprised that this is one of the key risks, because imagine you have a liability to ensure that everyone that's on the airline is protected. Okay, so the airline industry is sensitive to security and safety risks, as we just mentioned. There are things like geopolitical tensions, natural disasters, and global health emergencies, okay, such as the COVID-19 pandemic. And those things lead to reduced travel demand, travel restrictions, increased operating costs, as well as disruptions to flight schedules. So if you think about those factors, these are also items that we need to consider when you think about those growth opportunities. Remember, we mentioned that that's one of the company's objectives, and one of the growth opportunities that we see here is expansion, because they're currently operating in South Africa only, and there's only 3 destinations, which means there's space for them to grow. But when we suggest those strategies, we need to think about the safety concerns. We need to look at the locations that we want to recommend and check if there are any political tensions, if there's any natural disasters, or anything that could affect the flight schedules. All right, so those are the key risks. They've already been provided to us, which means that on the day, you're not going to get a question that's going to ask you to provide the risk, but you have to know how to use this information in some way or another. For example, if you get a question for about growth opportunities, no one is going to there's not going to be a line that says refer to the risk assessment that you received during the previous period. You have to continuously make the link between the information that you got at the beginning of this case study, which helps to understand the company, and the rest of the work that you are going to be doing on this case study. All right, this brings us to the end of document 1. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for the attention. If you have any questions, please do comment below and we will address your questions. Thank you.